The promise broken. The twin sons of Helios cast long shadows across the wheat fields as Thane Harrison made his final check of the irrigation systems. Their orange-tinted light painted his weathered face in warm hues, highlighting the scars that told stories he preferred to forget. 5 years of peaceful farming had softened his once rigid military bearing, but couldn't erase the watchful alertness in his eyes. Another perfect harvest cycle, Commander Harrison. The melodic voice belonged to Jun, one of the few locals who still used his old title. The reptilian farmer's scales shifted through shades of green as he approached through the swaying grain. Just Thane now, June, you know that. He straightened, rubbing his lower back. The physical labor of farming suited him better than the weight of command ever had. And yes, looking good, should have enough to supply the entire northern settlement this season. Jun's inner eyelids flickered, his species equivalent of a knowing smile. Some things don't change with time. The way you run these fields, the precision of your planning. Once a commander, always a commander. Thane was about to object when a high-pitched whine cut through the evening air. Both men turned toward the sound. A small ship, trailing smoke, plummeting toward the plains beyond the settlement's borders. Without thinking, Thane's hand moved to his hip where a weapon had once rested. Old habits, Jun observed quietly. The ship disappeared behind a ridge, its impact sending tremors through the soil. Thane was already moving, his long stride eating up the distance. Behind him, Jun called out, "I thought you didn't get involved anymore." "Checking for survivors isn't getting involved," Thane shouted back, but his gut told him otherwise. Nothing good ever came from falling stars. He found the crash site easily enough. A deep furrow carved through the earth, ending in a smoking crater. The ship's design was unfamiliar, its sleek lines suggesting speed over armament. As he approached, a panel burst outward, and a slender figure emerged. She was humanoid, but clearly alien. Her skin had a pearl-like iridescence, and her hair seemed to absorb and reflect light like fiber optics. She spotted him and raised her hands, speaking rapidly in a language his universal translator took a moment to process. "Please, they're coming. The Nexeri fleet. You have to help us." Thane kept his distance, hands visible. "Who's coming? Who are you?" "My name is Lyra. I'm from the luminous Concordat." She stumbled, and Thane instinctively moved to steady her. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he could feel her trembling. "Our outer colonies are already falling. The Nexeri, they're not just conquering. They're destroying everything. The settlement has defense treaties. Contact the colonial authority." "There's no time." Lyra's eyes, all silver, no pupils, fixed on his face. "The authority is compromised. The Nexeri have infiltrated them. That's how they got past our early warning systems. Please, I was told to find you." Commander Harrison, the hero of the Arcturus campaign. Thane's expression hardened. "That man is dead. I'm a farmer now. Then a lot more people will die too." Lyra's voice grew stronger, though she still leaned against him for support. "I've seen your file. You didn't just fight, you protected people. Saved them. That's why I came here. We need that man again." Before Thane could respond, a deep thrumming filled the air. They both looked up to see multiple dark shapes crossing the larger of Helios's two suns. Advanced scouts, Thane's military mind supplied automatically, standard invasion protocol. "They followed me," Lyra whispered, horror in her voice. "I led them right to you." Thane was already calculating. The settlement's population, defensive capabilities, evacuation routes, the very things he'd sworn never to think about again. His gaze dropped to his hands. Farmers' hands now, calloused from honest work rather than weapons. But they remembered. They remembered everything. "Jun," he called out, knowing the reptilian farmer had followed him. "Get to the settlement. Sound the alarm. Tell them." He paused, 5 years of peace hanging in the balance. "Tell them Commander Harrison says to initiate Protocol Winter Shield." "I thought you didn't get involved," Jun said, but he was already turning to run. Thane watched the shapes growing larger in the sky, felt the familiar ice of combat clarity crystallizing in his mind. Sometimes the universe doesn't give us a choice. He looked at Lyra. Can you walk? She straightened, nodding. Where are we going? To break a promise I made to myself. He began walking toward his homestead, where beneath 5 years of dust lay the tools of his former life. And then we're going to remind the Nexari why humanity earned its reputation among the stars. Warriors born. The bunker's air was thick with dust as Thane's hand pressed against the biosensor. 5 years of disuse fell away as systems hummed to life, illuminating the chamber in soft blue light. Lyra gasped beside him, her iridescent skin reflecting the glow. You had this under your farm the whole time. Everyone has something they bury. Thane moved to the center console, fingers dancing across holographic controls. The real question is how deep. The wall panels slid apart, revealing racks of advanced weaponry and combat suits. Lyra touched one of the suits reverently. These are Prometheus-class battle systems. I thought they were just legends. Prototypes. My team field tested them during the Arcturus campaign. Thane's voice carried old weight. They worked too well. Part of why I walked away. Above them, the distant sound of explosions shook dust from the ceiling. The Nexari weren't wasting time. Thane activated the bunker's sensor array, tactical displays springing to life around them. 7 ships in low orbit, 3 already deployed ground forces. His military training kicked in, analyzing threat patterns. They're being cautious, testing defenses. The Nexari don't believe in fair fights, Lyra said, her silver eyes hardening. On our worlds, they waited until our defense grids were compromised before launching their main assault. Then we don't play fair either. Thane reached for the nearest combat suit, muscle memory guiding his movements as he began the integration process. Jun will have the settlers heading for the emergency shelters. That buys us time. Time for what? To remind people that peace isn't the same as helplessness. The suit molded to his form, neural interfaces connecting with small clicks. Your people, the luminous Concordat, they're philosophers, artists, healers. But every species has warrior roots, if you dig deep enough. Lyra watched as the suit's systems came online, transforming the farmer back into something else entirely. We haven't fought a war in generations. The Nexari knew this. It's why they chose us. Then they made a mistake. Thane's helmet assembled around his head, HUD displaying tactical options. They forgot that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who have to remember how to fight. The bunker's communication system crackled. Jun's voice came through, strained but controlled. Thane, they're in the settlement. Moving house to house. Looking for something, or someone. Lyra's expression fell. They're looking for me. I carried data, proof of their infiltration of the colonial authority. If they find it, they won't. Thane checked his weapons, each movement precise. Because we're going to show them what happens when you corner peaceful people. He turned to a smaller weapons rack. Can you shoot? I told you, we don't. Everyone can shoot. The question is whether you can live with it. He held out a compact pulse rifle. Sometimes survival means choosing the lesser darkness. Her hands trembled as she took the weapon, but her grip was firm. Show me. The next hour was a crash course in combat basics. Thane was impressed. Beneath Lyra's peaceful exterior lay quick reflexes and sharp instincts. As he adjusted her stance for the 3rd time, she spoke softly. Why did you really stop fighting? The records say you disappeared after Arcturus, but they don't say why. Thane was quiet for a long moment, running diagnostics on his suit's systems. We were sent to stop a warlord. Brutal one. Using banned weapons on civilian targets. The mission was clean until... He checked the pulse rifle's charge. Until we found out he was being funded by elements within the colonial authority. The same people who sent us. What did you do? What soldiers do when they realize they're on the wrong side. His helmet turned toward her. We chose, and choices have consequences. Another explosion, closer this time. Thane's HUD highlighted multiple hostile signatures moving through the settlement. "Time's up," he said. "Ready for a field test." Lyra chambered around like he'd shown her. "Did your enemies ever thank you for teaching them how to fight?" Never had any survive long enough to ask. The bunker's exit ramp began to open. "But we're not fighting for thanks. We're fighting because sometimes the universe needs to be reminded." Reminded of what? Thane's suit hummed with power as he moved toward the exit. "That humanity didn't reach the stars by being peaceful. We got here by learning when peace isn't enough." He gestured for her to follow. "Let's go remind them." Lines in the sand. The settlement burned against the darkening sky. Thane moved through the shadows with practiced ease, his combat suit's adaptive camouflage rendering him nearly invisible. Lyra followed, her natural grace making her a quick study in stealth movement. 5 Nexeri soldiers swept the street ahead, their midnight blue armor adorned with pulsing red lights. "They're being sloppy," Thane whispered through their encrypted comlink. "Overconfident. They've never failed before," Lyra replied. "No one's ever fought back effectively. First time for everything." Thane's HUD analyzed the patrol's movement patterns. "Remember what I taught you about crossfire positions?" Lyra moved to the opposite side of the street, taking cover behind a damaged storage unit, like chess, but with plasma rounds. "Good student." Pride colored his voice. "On my mark." The ambush was devastatingly efficient. Thane's first shot disabled the patrol leader's weapon, while Lyra's covering fire forced the others into a tactical bottleneck. Within seconds, all 5 Nexeri were down, their armor systems scrambled by precisely placed electromagnetic pulses. "Non-lethal takedowns," Lyra observed, securing the unconscious soldiers. "I thought you were going to remind them to fear humanity." "Fear doesn't always need death to take root." Thane collected the Nexeri weapons. "Sometimes knowing your enemy could kill you, but chose not to, leaves a deeper mark." A transmission crackled through their comms. Jun's voice, tense but controlled. "Thane, they've reached the central plaza. They've got civilians." Thane's tactical display updated, showing enemy concentrations. "They're setting up a command post. Standard occupation protocol." He paused, studying the data. "Wait. Something's wrong. These deployment patterns. I've seen them before." The Nexeri used the same strategies on every world. Lyra began, but Thane shook his head. "Not Nexeri. These are Black Star Legion formations." His voice hardened. "Which means..." A new voice cut through their comms, deep and resonant with artificial harmonics. "Harrison, did you think I wouldn't recognize your handiwork? Still playing the merciful warrior, I see." Lyra saw Thane go rigid. "You know that voice." "Marshal Vex. The name carried years of history. Thought you died in the Arcturus campaign." "You left me to die," the voice corrected. "Me and half our strike team. When you decided your conscience was worth more than the mission." A pause. "The Nexeri appreciated my talents more than the colonial authority ever did. And now I get to show you exactly what your mercy cost." Thane's HUD highlighted multiple new signatures, elite troops moving with professional precision. "He's using the Nexeri as a cover," he told Lyra. "This isn't just an invasion. It's personal." "The data I carried." Lyra's voice shook. "It wasn't just about colonial authority corruption, was it? It was proof that someone was orchestrating these attacks, creating incidents to justify military response." Vex always did think bigger than his rank. Thane checked his weapons. "He's not here for your people or this settlement. He's building an army, using the Nexeri, using the authorities' corruption, all of it to gain power while making it look legitimate." An explosion rocked the plaza, followed by screams. Vex's voice returned. "You've got 10 minutes, Harrison. Come face me, or I start demonstrating what real warfare looks like to these civilians. Show them what mercy costs." Lyra grabbed Thane's arm. "It's a trap." Of course it is. He turned to her. But he's right about one thing. I did this. My choices, my attempt at finding peace, they led to this. His helmet retracted, showing her his face. Sometimes the only way to protect peace is to accept that you never really get to have it yourself. Then let me help. She hefted her rifle. My people aren't the only ones who need to remember their warrior heritage. Sometimes humans need to remember why they chose peace in the first place. Thane studied her for a moment, seeing the strength beneath her gentle exterior. If we do this, there's no going back. For either of us. There was no going back the moment they attacked my people. Her silver eyes hardened. Besides, I want to see if the stories about human ingenuity are true. Then let me show you why Vex is making a mistake. Thane's helmet reformed as he accessed the settlement's systems through his suit. He thinks this is about military strength. But humanity's greatest weapon was never our ability to fight. What then? Our ability to change the rules. He sent a series of commands through his tactical interface. Jun, initiate protocol Sunfall. Full spectrum. Around them, the settlement's hidden defenses began to wake up. Lyra watched in amazement as automated systems, disguised as ordinary infrastructure, transformed into a web of strategic assets. You planned for this, all while pretending to be nothing but a farmer. Humanity's other great talent, Thane replied, moving toward the plaza with renewed purpose. We never forget our roots, even when we try to grow beyond them. Ready to help me remind Vex why that's dangerous. Lyra fell into step beside him, her movements now carrying the same deadly grace as his. I think I'm starting to understand why the galaxy both fears and admires your species. Good. Thane's weapons hummed to life. Now let's go make sure they remember. The price of tomorrow. The central plaza had become a fortress. Nexari troops held defensive positions around makeshift barriers, while civilians huddled in the settlement's main hall. Thane's tactical display highlighted weak points in their formation, but something wasn't right. They're too exposed, he muttered, analyzing the deployment. Vex knows better than this. Unless it's exactly what he wants you to think, Lyra replied, her silver eyes scanning the scene. Look at the energy signatures. Thane's HUD shifted focus, revealing a web of subtle power fluctuations beneath the plaza. Containment field generators. He's not trying to keep them in. He's trying to keep everyone else out. A new voice cut through their comms. Jun, breathless but urgent. Thane, the settlement's deep scanners are picking up something inside the hall. Some kind of device they brought in with their first wave. Vex's laughter echoed across the plaza. Finally figured it out, Harrison. You always were quick, even if your conscience made you weak. The marshal appeared on the hall's steps, his armor a dark mirror of Thane's own. Remember what we found in the Arcturus vaults. The technology that could have won us the war. Thane's blood ran cold. The phase shifter. You actually built it. Built it? I perfected it. Vex spread his arms. Imagine. The ability to shift an entire population out of phase with normal spacetime. No more messy conquests. No refugee problems. Just clean slate colonization. That's why you chose the luminous Concordat worlds first, Lyra gasped. My people's natural resonance with quantum fields. You were testing the technology. Smart girl. Vex's tone carried cruel amusement. Your people's disappearance will be a tragedy, of course, but necessary to demonstrate the threat the authority needs to justify full military mobilization. Under my command, naturally. Thane was already moving, his suit's systems calculating possibilities. Jun, status on Protocol Sunfall. Ready. But Thane, if he activates that device. I know. He turned to Lyra. The settlement's defense grid can create a localized EMP burst. It'll fry the containment field, but also overload any quantum-sensitive technology in range. She met his gaze through his visor, including my people's neural matrices, and me. Vex called out again. 5 minutes, Harrison. Come face me, or I start the demonstration early. Show everyone what happens when mercy becomes weakness. Thane's hands clenched. Every tactical simulation ended the same way. Either sacrifice the few to save the many, or risk losing everything. The same choice he'd faced at Arcturus. There has to be another way, Lyra insisted, touching his arm. You taught me that humanity's strength isn't just in fighting. It's in changing the rules. Something clicked. Thane accessed his suit's deep archives, pulling up old mission data. Quantum resonance. Lyra, your people's neural patterns, they don't just make you vulnerable to the phase shifter. They could interface with it. Interface? I don't understand. Your natural quantum sensitivity. With the right modifications, his fingers flew over his tactical controls. Jun, the settlement's medical bay. Does it still have that experimental regeneration chamber? Yes, but wait. The quantum calibration matrix. Exactly. Thane turned to Lyra. Your people evolved to manipulate quantum fields naturally. The phase shifter works on the same principle, but brute forces it. With your neural pattern as a template, we could reverse the effect. Her eyes widened. Turn their weapon against them. If you're willing to risk it. He held her gaze. The interface could kill you. Lyra looked at the civilians in the hall, then back to Thane. You risked everything at Arcturus because it was right. Show me how humans face impossible choices. The next few minutes were a blur of precise movement. While Jun prepared the medical bay, Thane and Lyra split up. She moved toward the settlement's clinic, while he advanced on the plaza. Come to surrender, Harrison. Vex called out as Thane approached, hands raised. Come to talk about Arcturus. Thane kept his voice steady. About choices. Choices? Vex spat the word. You chose to betray everything we built. The power we could have wielded. I chose to remain human. Thane's HUD tracked Lyra's progress, waiting for the signal. Something you forgot how to be. Humanity is weakness. Vex's armor hummed with barely contained power. I'll prove it. I'll show everyone what real strength looks like. That's where you're wrong. Thane smiled behind his visor as his tactical display lit up with confirmation. Humanity's greatest strength was never in our weapons. The plaza erupted in quantum fire. What makes us human? The world shifted like a kaleidoscope, breaking apart and reforming. Thane's combat suit struggled to compensate as reality itself seemed to ripple. Through the chaos, he saw Vex stagger, his perfect plan unraveling. What have you done? The Marshal roared, his armor systems flaring erratically. Changed the rules. Thane advanced through the quantum distortion. Lyra's neural pattern is feeding back through your phase shifter. How does it feel, having peace turned into a weapon? In the medical bay, Lyra's consciousness spread through the quantum matrix, her natural resonance amplified by Jun's modifications. Through the settlement systems, her voice reached them all, ethereal and powerful. My people chose peace because we understood the responsibility of power. Something you never learned, Marshal. Vex's troops were falling back, their weapons and armor disrupted by the quantum cascade. But the Marshal himself stood firm, his enhanced systems adapting. You think this changes anything? Peace is a luxury of the powerful. I'll show you real strength. He charged at Thane, his armor's energy blade manifesting in a storm of particles. Thane met him halfway, decades of combat experience flowing through muscle and memory. They clashed in the heart of the quantum storm, two warriors representing vastly different visions of humanity's future. You had everything. Vex snarled between strikes, the power to reshape worlds, to make humanity the true masters of the galaxy. Thane parried a vicious thrust, his suit's systems working in perfect harmony with Lyra's quantum interference. That's what you never understood. Humanity's strength isn't in mastery. He countered, forcing Vex back. It's in choice, in knowing when to use power and when to set it aside. Weakness. Vex's attacks grew desperate. You'll doom us all to mediocrity. No. Thane's voice was calm now, certain. I'll show them there's another way. In the medical bay, Lyra's consciousness expanded further, touching every mind in the settlement. Human and alien alike felt her presence, understanding flowing like water. Through her, they saw the truth that strength and peace weren't opposites, but different faces of the same choice. Vex's phase shifter began to overload, its corrupted purpose turning back on itself. The Marshal's armor sparked and crackled as the quantum feedback reached critical levels. "Kill me then," he spat at Thane. "Prove I was right about what humanity really is." Thane lowered his weapon. "No, I'm going to prove what we can be." With precise movements, he interfaced his suit with the quantum field, adding his own pattern to Lyra's resonance. The technology that was meant to erase worlds became a bridge between minds, between understanding. For one brief moment, everyone in range, human, luminous Concordat, even the Nexari troops, shared consciousness. They felt Vex's pain, his fear of weakness that had driven him to seek ultimate power. They understood Thane's burden, the weight of choosing peace when war came easier. And they experienced Lyra's revelation, that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to grow beyond destruction. The quantum storm subsided. Vex fell to his knees, his armor dead and dark. Around the plaza, weapons lowered as former enemies looked at each other with new eyes. Thane rushed to the medical bay, finding Lyra weakened but alive. Her silver eyes met his, filled with wonder. "Did we succeed?" "We did more than that." He helped her stand. "We showed them something new, something better." Jun appeared in the doorway, his scales shifting through colors of amazement. "The Nexari ships are withdrawing. And you need to see this." Outside, the plaza had become a gathering. Humans and aliens alike were helping each other, sharing stories, breaking down barriers. The quantum link had faded, but its impact remained, understanding that transcended species and ideology. "What happens now?" Lyra asked, leaning against Thane as they watched the scene. "Now." He smiled, removing his helmet. "Now we do the hard part. We build something new, together. And Vex. He'll face justice, but not revenge." Thane looked at his hands, warriors' hands that had learned to farm, and now would help build a future. Because that's the choice we make, the choice that makes us human. The twin sons of Helios set on a changed world. In the gathering darkness, lights began to appear, not of warfare or destruction, but of hope. Human and alien, warrior and pacifist, all finding a new way forward. Thane felt Lyra's hand in his, strength and gentleness combined. Behind them, the settlement hummed with life and possibility. Before them stretched a future neither of them could have imagined alone. "You know," Lyra said softly, "I think I finally understand why humanity reached the stars. Oh, not because you were stronger or smarter, but because you never stopped believing in better possibilities." Thane looked at the stars emerging above them, the same stars that had watched humanity's long journey from cave-dwelling tribes to spacefaring civilization. Each step marked by choices, by the eternal balance between power and wisdom. "That's the real story of our species," he agreed. "Not that we learned to fight, but that we learned to choose when not to. And more importantly," he squeezed her hand, "we learned to help others make that choice too." Around them, a new chapter was beginning. Not just for one world or one people, but for all those who dared to believe that peace wasn't weakness, that strength could serve understanding, and that the greatest victories weren't won through force, but through the courage to imagine something better. The story of humanity among the stars continued, not as conquerors or victims, but as teachers, learners, and bridges between different ways of being. And on one small farming settlement, where a warrior had sought peace and found purpose, that story took another step forward into a future bright with possibility.